There are new EIDL disaster loans available. With Milton barreling down, there will likely be more. It is likely the SBA will run out of disaster funding before the end of the month. I sat down with an SBA director to talk about what's happening here with new EIDL disaster loans, the extreme funding situation in light of all the hurricanes, Helene and now Milton, what some of the major rumors are that have been circulating when it comes to disaster funding. I'll dispel some of those. Very important information for any individual or business owner, regardless of where you are in the US, for you to know about. I'll get to the interview in a minute that has been edited, but I've done timestamps along the key points that you should know about, so you can hear it straight from Alex himself. Shout out to Alex and his entire team. You know, Alex has been at the SBA for almost 20 years. We've been covering SBA programs for the past 4.5 years since the pandemic, every single change since then to help the nation's small business owners, to help folks affected by disasters. They work tirelessly to improve programs and get out the correct information. So here it is. You're not going to find it anywhere else. I recommend watching till the end. A couple tips before the interview. If you want to see if disaster loans are available in your area now, use the link in the description. It'll take you to lending.sba.gov. Click determine your eligibility, put in the state and county, your property type, home or business, if you've had physical damage or economic injury, aka EIDL, or not sure, and the date of the disaster that impacted your business with economic injury. And you will see if there is a declared disaster that's relevant for you. That's the best way to see it. Again, 35 declared disasters right now. No doubt there's going to be more. In this case, you can see Helene is active. If you click select, you can read more, the counties it covers, the deadline to apply for economic injury, the deadline to apply for physical damage, a nice map of the counties that have been affected, and click the red button to apply for assistance for this disaster. You'll need to log in to your lending.sba.gov account to proceed, but that's the fastest way to do this. Alex is going to talk about that a little bit. Second, here are several of the rumors. FEMA will only provide $750 to disaster survivors to support their recovery. That's false. If you want the info, please read this description. I'll link to this below as well. Another rumor, FEMA is blockading people in Florida and preventing evacuations. False. FEMA only provides loans to disaster survivors. Also false. Applying multiple times for disaster assistance will speed up the process of being approved. False. FEMA distributes aid based on demographic characteristics. False. FEMA is no longer accepting applications for housing assistance. FEMA does not have enough money to provide disaster assistance for Helene, and more. You can go take a look at all of those. By the way, if you support this information, this interview in depth, no matter where you are in the country, hit the subscribe button, turn on alerts. And if you want to find more about grants, financing, funding for your business, or other resources to help your business, you can always create a free Skip account, link below, or helloskip.com. Go through dozens of these funding options. Let's get to the interview with Alex, and at the end, I will talk about the dwindling funds available for disaster loans. But the long of the short is, if you think you need disaster funding, act now. And there have also been changes to loan limits when it comes to unsecured EIDL loans. Without further ado, here's Alex. I'll see you on the other end. Alex from the SBA, welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Ryder.
So to give context, 20 years you've been at the SBA, or that your 20-year anniversary is coming up.
Yeah, I've been with SBA a little over 19 years now. I started right after Hurricane Katrina, our agency's largest response to any disaster activity outside of the pandemic. That year, we had Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, and Wilma. Seen some very active hurricane seasons since then.
You know, we're going to get into all that today, the effects of, you know, Helene, Milton now, because this is happening real time. So that's why I appreciate doing this last minute to get the message out, because there's important things people should know.
The strength of these storms and their ability to cause not just damage from the storm surge, which is obviously what a lot of people pay close attention to, you know, as the storm makes landfall, because that is extremely deadly. If you are in one of those coastal areas that has warnings for the storm surges and there are evacuation orders, please follow those, get to safer area. other storms that are coming in are now coming inland and causing a lot of flash flooding and becoming huge rain and precipitation events. And like what we saw with Hurricane Helene, people have seen in like North Carolina, it's not so much the wind damage, it's the flooding. We see a direct correlation between uninsured flood losses and the SBA disaster loans. So, because flooding is one of those types of disaster events where there's a much higher rate of uninsurance for those. People tend to not get flood insurance unless they're required to by law. And so we'll see homeowners and businesses who aren't required to carry flood insurance, or maybe just haven't, been able to obtain it for some reason, maybe because of the cost, maybe because of the time. When something happens, they have a lot more uninsured losses, and then they have to turn to a program like ours to help with rebuilding. So, I mean, in every disaster event, we've seen, cases of misinformation, and we've, as federal disaster programs, we do our best to try and correct that. But what we've been seeing lately with Hurricane Helene, based on my experience, I can only describe as just a blatant misinformation campaign. It worries me because it seems to be for the purpose of undermining confidence in the federal response. The problem with that is it has a very real negative impact on the disaster survivors who are in those areas and trying to recover now from those events. Putting out blatantly false misinformation, conspiracy theories, things like that are going to dissuade survivors who need assistance urgently from applying for programs that they're eligible for. That's true for the programs that FEMA's providing to people right now. And it could be true for when it comes time for them to apply for the SBA disaster loan. And that's the exact opposite of what we want to see happen, or what we need to happen when we talk about helping people. We need them to apply so that way we can determine their eligibility and get them assistance as quickly as possible. People may not realize, SBA is extremely active in responding to different types of disasters all around the country, all year round. I think we're currently responding to more than 35 active disaster declarations around the country. Those range from those major presidential declarations like we have for Hurricane Helene in multiple states, to smaller, more, regional or localized types of disasters that might only affect businesses and economic injury. So you would have, maybe something like a Secretary of Agriculture declaration, and we're providing economic injury disaster loans to small businesses that are impacted by a drought. Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse was another example of an EIDL, or an economic injury disaster loan only declaration. Yeah, so if there are any businesses out there who haven't left the premise yet, because let's say, they're maybe not right on the coast, they're in one of the other areas that maybe hasn't implemented an evacuation order yet, or maybe it's voluntary and they still have a little bit more time. If you're still there, one of the things I recommend you doing, you need to document your business property before you leave. An easy way to do that is to just use your phone. Take out your phone, use your camera, and walk through your business, through all of the rooms, capturing all of the machinery and equipment, furniture, fixtures, inventory that you have. And you can talk over the video just to kind of narrate what's in there. This is much easier and faster than you having to go and write and inventory everything down right as you're trying to make other preparations to leave. This will help you later in case you do have physical losses and you need to remind yourself as you're working with an insurance adjuster, or you're talking with one of SBA's loss verifiers about what your damages were. At least you have that record of what was there and what was in place before the storm actually caused any damage at all. The other thing is to try and organize your financial records. I know a lot of us keep these things just kind of, spread around, maybe in your mailbox or through different folders or on different thumb drives. Try and collect those things so they're all easy for you to access in one place, whether you're keeping those in the cloud or like I said, if you're keeping them on a thumb drive or something. So that way, later on, as if you do suffer damages from one of these events, you're going to have a lot of other things on your plate to do, but at least one of them won't be having to go out and search through all of your digital records to find those things. You'll know exactly where you placed them so you can access them later. Home loan applications or business applications for sole proprietors and independent contractors, those can usually be processed pretty quickly. Prior to Hurricane Helene and this recent spike in activity, we were turning around credit decisions in those in just like 1 to 2 weeks. With the increase of activity, though, that we're looking at, I do expect that there's probably going to be a little bit longer average processing time. And especially for those business applications that have a more complex ownership structure. So if you have a corporation and you have multiple owners and we have to get financial records and things for them, as part of the application, expect that some of that stuff might take a little bit longer. Just know that we will always try and process them as quickly as we can. And we always follow a first in, first out sort of approach where we process the applications that came in first and that are the oldest ones, which is why we encourage businesses to apply early as soon as you can. Even if you're not sure you're going to take the loan if you are approved, because at least you'll know what you qualify for. And then in the event that you do need the loan, at least it's there available to you, and then you can move on with the next step. You're not obligated to accept a loan if you are approved. You can decline it, and then let's say something happens later on, you can come back and say, you know what, after all, I do need that loan that I didn't accept before. Turns out insurance didn't provide me as much as I thought they were going to, or whatever might have changed. And we can reinstate those canceled loan funds. Best practice is to apply early and then make a decision later once you know what you qualify for. The disaster loan program with SBA has some really great terms, and there's some recent things that we did for the program to help expedite getting that money into the hands of the survivors. We also provide up to a full year of no interest accrual and no payments from the date of the initial disbursement. Interest doesn't accrue. We're not asking for any payments for that first year of the loan. The unsecured loan limit is raised from $25,000 up to $50,000 for physical damage loans. We also raised the unsecured limit for the economic injury disaster loans from $25,000 to $50,000, and that actually applies to any declaration type, because we do EIDL loans in those major presidentials. We do them agency declarations. We do them in the smaller, like governor certification declarations and the Secretary of Agriculture declarations. What that means is for an unsecured loan, we can disperse those funds much faster than we can a secured loan, because we don't have the extra time that it needs to take to record title and meet all of the other collateral requirements, right? So when you get a loan approval and you accept it, and then, if it's an unsecured loan, you can expect to be able to close and get those funds very quickly. If it's a secured loan, it's going to take longer to get the full loan amount. The other thing I want to point out for businesses is that you can actually combine those two. So a business that had both physical damages and economic injury could get $25,000 unsecured for physical and $25,000 unsecured for economic injury. $50,000 and $50,000, and get a combined $100,000 unsecured. Some people might have seen this over the weekend. The White House issued a letter to Congress talking about the need for additional funding for the disaster loan program, so that way we can continue. We expect to run out of funds before the end of October unless there's an increase to the program. So we're hoping that Congress is going to act on that, and we will have minimal disruption to our ability to provide those disaster loans. What I can say, we will continue to provide assistance to survivors in the field. So we will continue to have staff in those disaster recovery centers and business recovery centers, assisting them with applying. We will continue to accept new applications. coming in, and we will process those as much as we can. But if we do run into a funding lapse, we would be unable to issue new approvals, and that would be delayed until we got additional funding. So, like I said, hopefully, if there is a lapse, it's very short-lived, and we can resume normal operations and begin getting funding out to everybody as quickly as possible. What people probably don't realize, because they don't live and work in this world like I have for the last almost 20 years, is that $750 for serious needs assistance is what I think FEMA refers to it as. That is definitely not the maximum amount that any survivor who's been impacted by this can get. That's the immediate amount that they give to you very quickly, and it didn't always exist. They didn't always provide immediate assistance to you like that. That's something that's, I would say, a little bit newer. FEMA's done a really great job leaning forward as far as trying to expedite assistance to survivors, get them what they need without making them go through overly burdensome process of applying for things and providing documentation to prove what their impact was, just to get what they need in order to get food and water and medicine and baby supplies and whatever the need might be. So that is I was really surprised to see a program like that, which has really come to the aid of so many survivors around the country for different disaster events, be targeted for this misinformation and be completely flipped around as something that it wasn't. But I'm hoping that people now are, starting to learn and educate themselves about the different categories of assistance that FEMA provides. Even if there is a funding lapse as far as what we can approve in disaster loans, we will still have a strong presence. We will still meet disaster survivors where they are and help them through this process. For everybody out there in the Florida area that's right now, pay attention to the alerts from your local emergency managers. And the storm surge and the life-threatening flooding that it's going to bring with it is very real, regardless of if it's a 5, a 4, or a 3.
A huge shout out to Alex for covering these important areas and echoing what he said, thinking of everyone who's in affected areas, especially as we're recording this in real time. Now on the SBA disaster loan program running out of money, the president wrote this letter to Congress asking to replenish the funding. They may run out of funding in the next couple weeks before the end of October. And if they do run out of funding, I'm going to report that here first. Thanks for subscribing and liking this video. Let me know in the comments if any of this affects you. And give a shout out to everyone in Florida, the Southeast, and others affected by disasters. Most importantly, stay well, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next video.